All right. Ba, 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 bum, bum, ba, 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 bum, bum. I can hit it high. Bum, 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 ba, 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 bum. Ba, 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 pew, 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 pew. Oh, I love the sound effects are actually what I love about Star Wars. Sound effects, the characters, the weapons, all that kind of stuff. Welcome to another episode of Revealed Apologetics. I'm your host, Eli Ayala, and very excited to be here with two friends and fellow Star Wars nerds and some pretty not too shabby apologists. So I'm looking forward to getting into a really, really good discussion today. So why don't you guys take an opportunity to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your channel, what you're doing, what you're all about, and then we'll jump right into our discussion on some Star Wars and apologetics. So Tim, since he's the most hardcore, I mean, dag, bro. Like he literally, before we went live, he literally just pulled that out from under his table and just
I can't compete with that.
Yeah, Braxton looks like Darth Vader after his
Oh no. Humpty Dumpty.
It's like Luke takes off the mask and he's like, but you'll die. And then he sees the face and he goes, okay, we got to put the mask right back.
There we go.
Oh yeah, there you go. Look at you guys. All right. So Tim, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your ministry, what you do, what you're all about, and take it away.
Well, I just got to start with this. Red 5 standing by.
Red 7 standing by.
Stay on target.
Now I can, one thing that's good about COVID is it allows me to wear my Boba Fett mask. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, see? So, it's just, I actually need to get a Mandalorian helmet, a Mandalorian mask, because then I would love COVID. Because that would give me an excuse to just wear that around all the time and never take it off. So, yeah. So anyway, all right, now I look more like Darth Vader myself. All right. So yeah, my name's Tim Stratton, and I run freethinkingministries.com. Also have a YouTube channel called Free Thinking Ministries. So I encourage people to check that stuff out. I love theology and apologetics, and whenever I have a chance to bring Star Wars into the mix and use that as illustrations to help people think about apologetic issues or theological issues. I love to do that. So I have quite a bit, at least several articles relating Star Wars to apologetics. In fact, I have one called The Apologeti and the Power of the Force.
So cool, man.
I have another one called 10 Reasons Why the Mandalorian is my favorite Star Wars character. And I do have to say, I grew up with Luke Skywalker as my hero. He's still my hero. But I got to say, man, I think the Mandalorian has become my favorite Star Wars character. Well, maybe I'll talk more about that later. But just a little bit of my background or my origin story. Right before my 4th birthday, so when I was still 3 years old, my great-grandpa died. I didn't know anything about death at the time. And my mom tried to explain to me how he's no longer in his body, how his body, we're going to bury it under the ground, but he's up in heaven. And so 2 weeks later, I should say, I gave my life to Christ. She shared the gospel with me then. And so I gave my life to Christ at 3 years old, almost 4. About 2 weeks later, Star Wars comes out. And so it made total sense to me to see Obi-Wan Kenobi get struck down, but to become more powerful than anybody could possibly imagine. It made sense. And so I've been walking, basically with Jesus and Luke Skywalker since I was 4 years old, and Christianity and Star Wars. My parents would use Star Wars to explain things to me. In fact, one time I'll never forget my parents telling me, they said, Tim, if you want to be a Jedi, Christianity is actually, a Christian is actually more powerful than a Jedi. I'm like, well, what do you mean? And they said, well, Tim, I think they called me Timmy at the time. Timmy, the same power that created the universe and raised Jesus from the dead is the same power that lives in you if you're a Christian. And that's much more power than a Jedi could ever have. So literally, I've been my parents have used Star Wars to help me understand theology basically my whole life. And so I have a passion to do the same for others today.
I don't know, Braxton. There's a heresy somewhere in there.
I'm sure.
I'm sure the super reformed folks watching, they'll be like, that is unacceptable, Eli.
Well, and this is, and one of the things about Star Wars that is interesting and kind of separates it from a show that is not entirely, but primarily focused on a naturalistic perspective like Star Trek, which is instantly why Star Wars wins in which shows better. It's because Star Wars has a seemingly supernatural element, although maybe we could talk about that later. But that more adequately reflects the way the world actually is. There is a supernatural element rather than the naturalistic explain everything of Star Trek. And so Star Wars not only is more like Christianity in at least that minor way in that it has something supernatural, but also Lucas clearly borrowed from a variety of world religions. Everybody knows that. There's obviously Eastern stuff in there, like the Brahmin being like the Force and those sorts of things. But of course, at least in the prequels, we have what appears to be a virgin birth because of the Force. That's so right. I mean, there's
I have to interrupt you, Tim. Isn't it funny that Braxton looks like we've invited a Star Wars scholar? I mean, you know way too much about the background, bro. It's like this is pretty intense right now. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's pretty much it. It's just I've made that point many times. Is that one of the things I actually didn't like about the prequels, and I'm a defender of the prequels. I think people trash the prequels way too much and far too easily. Not to say that there aren't parts of it that we don't like or that we can't take issue with, but one of the things I didn't like about it is I think that in trying to explain the Force in some kind of a naturalistic way with the midichlorians actually detracted from what was great about one of the great things about it, which is that there seems to be this supernatural element. It may have been you, Eli, or someone telling me something that maybe is in the expanded universe that Disney may have decided to get rid of or to keep. They seem to be willy-nilly about doing that. But somebody told me it could be that the midichlorians are not actually the ones causing the power of the Force, but are simply attracted to the Force and therefore are strong. There's more of them in a person with whom the Force is strong, like moths on a flame or something. But I didn't actually introduce myself, but I'm Braxton Hunter. I run Trinity Radio, and that's really all that matters, I guess.
After he's exercised his expertise in Star Warsology, he's like, by the way, I'm Braxton.
Much like the Mandalorian busting into a cantina, getting everyone down and then introducing himself.
You did a good job there. You jumped right in. I was like, okay, all right, we're doing this right now. He knows his stuff. That's good. And I want to explore a little bit of what you said there with regards to some of the religious background there. But before we start, so Tim said that his favorite character was the Mandalorian, or at least he's becoming his favorite character. That was going to be my next question, but since you gave it away early, that's completely fine. So I'm going to ask you a question, Tim, and then maybe Braxton can let us know who his favorite character is and why, and then I'll share mine. So my question for you, Tim, and then I'll ask you also, Braxton, is what is one thing that you love about Star Wars in general? Not like a specific character, but just something of maybe the themes or the sort of movie that it is. What is one thing you absolutely love about Star Wars that it draws you to, those movies, those stories? And what's one thing you absolutely hate? Like, oh man, I love Star Wars, but there's this one thing that really gets me annoyed, and you can't say Jar Jar Binks. Go ahead.
Oh man. Yeah. So what I love about Star Wars would just, the classic story of good and evil. It gets good and evil right. Sure. And especially in a day and age where everything is being confused with relativism and postmodernism and all of that, Star Wars gets good and evil right. I mean, you clearly and redemption as well. So I mean, seeing the redemption of Darth Vader and Kylo Ren, or Ben, Anakin Skywalker and Ben Solo, sure. Seeing their stories, so good and evil and redemption in general, along with, as what Braxton already said, a supernatural element to the stories. That's what I love the most about them, I think.
Okay. All right. And Braxton, who's your favorite character?
Without question, Han Solo.
Okay. All right.
Han, so I was a big Harrison Ford fan growing up.
Sure.
Indiana Jones. In fact, I probably prefer Indiana Jones to Han Solo, even though I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Although in many ways that's the same character set in a different setting.
Right. Yep.
And so Han is my favorite. And what I love about Star Wars in general is, and it sounds like me and Tim are on the same page here, is so one of the things that used to be true. So you have these stories that kind of serve as the myths of a particular society or culture. And if you read there's a great Oxford published book by, I forget the guy's first name. The last name is Hunter. He's not related to me, but something Hunter. And it's called How to Change a Culture or How to Change the World or something like that. And it's fantastic because what he's talking about there, it's a Christian book. He's talking about Christianity, but he's talking about how cultures don't really change from the bottom up. Now, most of our evangelical leaders, and probably the three of us too, many times preaching and teaching will say, we need to reach the world for Christ. We need to, the way we're going to change America is to see people come to Christ. That's the most important thing. And of course, for our personal evangelistic strategies, that is the most important thing. But cultures really change from the top down more than they change from the bottom up. That's why it is that the majority of middle America didn't want biological evolution taught in the classroom, but yet it's taught in the classroom in their county. Why is that? Because these things change from the top down. The majority of Americans were not on board with same-sex marriage, but it changes from the top down because the people that are making the entertainment, the music, the policies, those kind of people are the ones who really impact and shape a culture. And so all that to say, we have these cultural myths. And Star Wars is one of our most beloved cultural myths. We all grew up with it, at least people from our generation and younger, and maybe even a couple of generations older than us and younger, they grew up on Star Wars. And so as a result of that, it becomes a part of how we look at the world, even though we would never think about that. So, and what Tim said is absolutely right. So you had the good side, the dark side. You had, you had Luke Skywalker, who was the, as much as he sounds whiny sometimes, and I wanted to go to Tashi Station and pick up some power converters, but he's still very much the good. He represents what is pure, what is undefiled, what is good. And Darth Vader is the most perfect expression of an evil, menacing villain, even more so the Emperor, and you have all of that. And it's very clear. The lines are very clear. Now, the criticism of that is obviously that, well, yeah, but that's not how the world is. I mean, in the world, there are people that are complex and there's some good and bad in all of us. Yes, but in the cultural myths that we tell ourselves, it is very good for a culture to have a clear good guy, bad guy setup because we want to, that way we can aspire to be the good guy. I want to be Luke Skywalker. I want to be the good guy that saves the day. And I don't want to be the bad guy. And so that's very, very important. And I'll hush after this, but
I feel like we're going to have to take offering now. We're about to get crazy.
Yeah.
Star Wars sermon.
Somebody just play Just As I Am without one plea, and we're going to have an altar call. But real quickly, what is happening today is what we're seeing is take the Disney movies, the non-Star Wars Disney movies, like the fairy tale movies. What we have there is very much most of the stories are your parents don't understand. I mean, think about Ariel and the Little Mermaid. Your dad doesn't really understand. Or in Moana, your parents, they just don't get it. They don't understand. Follow your heart, even if it means going against what your parents want, because they don't get it. And the villain is not really a villain. The villain is just misunderstood. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously that can happen, but what it does is it destroys that important cultural myth that becomes a part of the fabric of who we are, that no, there's good guys and bad guys. We want to aspire to be like the good guys, not like the bad guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, now you said something that I thought was interesting, and it reminded me of a line from a movie, not Star Wars. It was from Jesus of Nazareth, that old movie from the 70s. You ever see that movie?
I don't think so.
Okay, there was this really cool line that I thought was profound, but then you said something that kind of seems to contradict it, which is fine because it's just a Jesus movie. It wasn't a quote from scripture, where when it was talking about the Roman Empire and the people who are subject to them, and the mission that Jesus was doing was not so much to overthrow the top, right? He said that before kingdoms change, men must change. And when he said that, I kind of always saw that as kind of a changing society from the bottom up,
but you suggested that society changes from the top down. Do you think that there is a sort of balanced way of looking at that depending on what it is, society can change from the top down, but in some other areas, the change really, real change comes from the bottom up?
Yeah, well, I think so there's the ideal, what we think should be the case. And I think as I said, most of our evangelical leaders, from Chuck Colson to, in the 80s, to Jerry Falwell, to they would all say, hey, we got to reach America and change America by reaching people for Christ. Well, amen to that. That should be our goal as Christians. That should be how we seek to do it. But the reality is, it just seems to be a fact about world history that when you see a paradigm shift in a culture, not individuals, but in a culture, that comes from the top down. But here's what has to be the case: you have to have the movement at the grassroots available if someone or several someones at the top is going to catch wind of it. This is exactly what happened with Christianity. And whether, whatever good or bad we want to say about what happened with Constantine and all of that, it was a change at the top that then threw Christianity onto the world stage in a way that it never had been before. So that's of course something that the guy in the book goes into as well. So, it's just like with, Jesus saying, you've heard it said, that an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, if someone strikes you on your one cheek, turn your other cheek to him also. Jesus wasn't going against Yahweh and saying that the courts, like the actual court system, shouldn't dispense precisely the kind of justice that they dispense. It's just that he was saying interpersonally, if you're one of my followers, you don't have to turn someone into the courts, and you don't have to get that sort of vengeance. So there is this governmental, higher level, societal, institutional change that affects the culture. And then there's this grassroots level. And we as Christians, I think, should impact both if we can. It's why I want to see Christian movies and Christian books be better than they are. And of course, it brings to mind that C.S. Lewis quote that we don't need more Christian books and he wouldn't have said Christian movies, but Christian movies. What we need are more good Christians making good books and movies. Yeah. And so because that impacts culture. So the grassroots has a role to play in being there and being present so that people at the top can be impacted by it. And then you see the top down change.
Yeah. That's very good. Very interesting. All right, now I want to share real quick my favorite character and why, and then I want to ask Tim something that I've always admired him for with regards to how he writes and how he words things and how he comes up with some very creative and interesting ways to make his articles
Braxton, can you hear Eli?
No, but I can hear you.
Okay.
We're here.
Eli froze up.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess until he comes back, we could have our own conversation about Star Wars.
Or we could just talk about Eli behind his back.
That's right. So did you actually say what your least favorite thing about Star Wars is?
I don't think I did. I guess I can talk about that. Probably my least favorite thing about Star Wars is The Last Jedi. That movie really made me sick to my stomach for a while. Left a really bad taste in my mouth. And actually, I contemplated not even liking Star Wars anymore because it just rocked me, because Luke Skywalker had always been my favorite character. And I think there's still something going on with me today. The reason why I say The Mandalorian has become my favorite is because he hasn't let me down yet. But Jon Favreau and his team talk about redemption. Maybe Luke Skywalker has been redeemed as well with their last episode of The Mandalorian. But yeah, maybe my hopes were set too high for The Last Jedi. But there was some good parts about that movie. I thought the lightsaber battles were awesome. But yeah, I had a tremor in the force, to say the least, when I saw that movie, because my childhood hero was Luke Skywalker. Everything that I'd been imagining about Luke Skywalker over the past 30 years or so went down the drain during that movie. And in my mind, Luke had become the most powerful Jedi to ever live, and he'd mastered the ways of the Force, even surpassing Yoda. And more than that, of course, that Luke Skywalker's confidence and faith in the Force would be so strong. Surely he'd be so strong by now that he would never doubt, the will of the Force, as Qui-Gon Jinn put it. all those years ago in episode 1. But instead, what do we get in The Last Jedi? We got Luke, who is now only lukewarm. Lukewarm Skywalker, we should say. He's much older but less mature in The Last Jedi.
Lukewarm Skywalker. That's
lukewarm.
great.
That's what we got. He's worse than the whiny kid who wanted to go to the Tashi station to pick up some power converters with his friends before his chores were done. I think that's how it worked. But so in that movie, Luke Skywalker, now in his 60s, is still an immature and emotional brat who was leaping to conclusions that didn't logically follow. In fact, I thought the Luke Skywalker of The Last Jedi had regressed in maturity from the Luke Skywalker that we saw in Return of the Jedi over 3 years ago. And why did this happen? Well, this immature Jedi Master seems to suffer. And I wrote an article about this, about that he's suffering from the emotional problems of the dark side of the dark side of evil. So we hear about answering the problem of evil logically, but you also want to answer the problem of evil with emotions in mind.
Yeah.
And Luke Skywalker was suffering from the emotional problem of the dark side, not the logical problem. And for a Jedi Master, that's a problem. I mean, that's like, Dr. William Lane Craig suffering from the emotional problem of evil and forgetting the logical answers, all the work that he's done on
William Lane Craig is the Luke Skywalker we want and need.
That's right. So, Luke abandons the Jedi Order and closes himself off from the Force altogether in that movie. And a friend of mine summarized The Last Jedi into this kind of a parody. And so imagine this conversation between Rey and Luke Skywalker. And so Rey says, Master Skywalker, are you going to join the rebellion and fight against the evil First Order? And Luke is like, nah. And Rey says, well, that sounds like the exact opposite of what Luke Skywalker would do. And Luke says, not only is every word in that last sentence wrong, I'm also going to end the Jedi. Yeah. Rey says, what? Why? Luke, for over 1,000 generations, the Jedi were the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy. But then they screwed up a couple times, so I'm ending it. I'm closing myself off from the Force. In fact, the Force is dead to me. Rey, well, that doesn't make any sense. Luke, I was the one who screwed it up last time so that Ben Solo would turn evil and become Kylo Ren. So therefore, the galaxy is better off without the Jedi. People in the galaxy shouldn't even think the Force exists. Rey, no, because without the Jedi, the dark side has an unchallenged champion, Snoke, who has nearly destroyed the Republic. Luke, oh, right, the dark side. I guess completely withdrawing from the Force was a really dumb idea. Maybe I should have joined the rebellion against the evil First Order, which would probably be much more within my character, the Luke Skywalker who everybody knows. Oh, well, I'm old and grumpy now, and absolutely nothing can change my mind. Then R2-D2 comes along and plays an old recording of Princess Leia. Luke, change my mind. Let's go. So anyway, it just that's how I summarize The Last Jedi, and really didn't like it. I after the first time I saw the movie with my son, we went at midnight, and I was like, I remember about halfway through the movie, and I started thinking, I'm not really enjoying this. It's kind of dragging, and I don't really like where it's going. This is weird. I'm sure they're going to fix it. And then it never got fixed. It seemed to get worse. And Luke Skywalker then kind of dies. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, but the thing that's great about it, like, okay, so I have the same concern. The fans are divided over Last Jedi. Right. I'm on the side of not a fan of Last Jedi. I thought there were several opportunities that were missed. I thought that everything you said was true about Luke, the way Luke came off and everything. But in spite of that, so in The Force Awakens, we have created exactly what you imagined of Luke Skywalker. He's this Messiah figure. Rey is kind of like, when she first hears about him, is he real? Like, right. Is there really? Right. It's like a myth. It's a legend. It's almost like Jesus, and we need this character to come and to save us and deliver us. And he's the only one that can. she gets there and the setting is perfect. It's just what we would imagine, you know, some mysterious island.
Oh yeah.
And when we see him, somehow they took Mark Hamill the way he's been looking for the past couple of decades and made him look awesome. I mean, he looked amazing.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, you hand the lightsaber over to what's his name, who did Last Jedi, and
Rian Johnson.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like I mean, all this has been said before, but even in spite of all of the bad stuff and the weird blue cow milk thing that looks like a Muppet and all that stuff, we get to the end and it's like, okay, because I was like you watching the movie, I'm like, this isn't. We've now taken half the movie to go to planet prequels over here where everything's computer generated, this gambling planet, and when we finally get to the end, it's like, okay, now this could be good because we have Luke Skywalker getting shot down by like 15 AT-AT walkers.
That was awesome.
And yet walks out like it's nothing. But then we find out he literally phoned it in. He wasn't even there. And then he kills over of a stroke.
Yeah, he dies because he got tired or something. I don't know. Yeah, there were some good moments. Yeah, that going against the AT-ATs there. Those were, you know, I was freaking out. I was like, yeah, everything's gonna get better here. And then it didn't. Man, you know, what a wasted opportunity. But I did think what was the third one? The third of that
Rise of Skywalker.
What's that?
Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. I thought the last one was good. I wrote, I've got an article called 5 Reasons the Force is Strong with the Rise of Skywalker. I talk about redemption and the prodigal son. You know, again, we get to see Ben Solo or Kylo Ren. And we get to see his parents, you know, Han and Leia, their unconditional love for their son. And it reminded me of the parable of the prodigal son, how they'd do anything to get him back. And their love for him never stopped, no matter how evil he became. And they were constantly going after him. You know, that part of the movie and that trilogy with Kylo / Ben returning, leaving, you know, as Jesus said in John 8:11, go and leave your life of the dark side. You know, that's the TSV, the Tim Stratton version. You know, he does that and he comes back and he help save the day. I love that. I also loved in that movie, in The Rise of Skywalker, the theme of adoption. You know, and you see the old lady at the end of the movie ask Rey who she is, and she says, I'm Rey Skywalker. You know, even though her DNA is related to the most evil person in the universe, you know, Emperor Palpatine. She says, no, I'm Rey Skywalker. And then the Force ghosts of Luke and Leia show up and approve. They give her that stamp of approval. And Rey has been adopted into the Skywalker family. So, you know, adoption is one of the main themes of Christianity. It doesn't matter if one is red, yellow, black, or white.
You're back.
I have no idea what happened. I like my computer bugged out. I have no idea. It was like freezing up. Oh my gosh.
The host of the show is back.
Yeah.
Literally
We
never
literally
happened
took
before.
over the show.
You see, it was God got angry because of all that heresy Tim was saying towards the beginning.
Yeah.
I thought he'd punish you instead.
Well, you know, I don't know if you could hear us when we were talking, but you know, that he was just talking about the beautiful in Rise of Skywalker, the adoption. You were born literally of the most evil, you know, the Emperor, you know, Palpatine, and yet that bloodline, and yet you're adopted into the Skywalker family. That's beautiful. And you know, there's another thing that I liked in Skywalker, and it goes back to the good and evil thing that Star Wars captures so well, at least in the Skywalker family saga, and that is because you do have like the anti-hero type thing with Mandalorian a little bit, and those sorts of things. So that those stories are there, and Rogue One has some anti-heroes and stuff. I mean, we find out that part of the rebellion is maybe a terrorist group. So, but anyway, did we lose him again?
Well, what's he doing, man?
Well, anyway, one of the things that's great about it is I heard this clip from, I know this is a divisive character, but Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson was on Joe Rogan, and he was talking about, and I thought this was just so incredible. He said, he was talking about archetypes, and he said, if you take everything that is great, if you take all the good qualities out of like the 10 best people you know and put them into one person, well, that's like a hero. That's like a literary hero. And then he said, but now if you took all the literary heroes and take all their best qualities and extract those and not any of the bad qualities and put those into one figure, that's Jesus. That's a meta hero. And what I thought was great was that actually happened in Rise of Skywalker in a sense, because in the end, I forget how they, she channeled like all the great Jedi of the past. Right. And he's channeling all the Sith of the past. So you have literally the most evil archetype, at least in the Star Wars universe, and the most good archetype battling each other at the end. And of course, good overcomes. Yeah. And so not only is Star Wars already a great setup for that sort of thing, but it actually literally embodies that in Palpatine and Rey there at the end. Thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. Makes me want to go watch the movie again.
Yeah. Well, but and that's some of the stuff there that people think is maybe not kind of goofy in Rise of Skywalker, is the over the top nature of some of that stuff. But and I don't know, I can't say that like the writers were thinking that way about archetypes and stuff, but it is a great analogy. And maybe since Eli is not here, maybe we could segue into that sort of a thing. Like you already talked about how your mom used and your dad used Star Wars to illustrate spiritual truths to you. And so you do that a lot with movies like the Avengers movies and stuff. And I've done that quite a bit too. So clearly there's value in looking at the cultural myths and stories that we have that are the biggest and drawing these things out. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, with my parents doing that for me, shout out to my mom and dad, Russ and Suzanne Stratton. Hey guys. And my sister, Jessica, we just grew up in that environment. I mean, my parents were always reading us the Chronicles of Narnia or The Hobbit, and Lord of the Rings, those books. And then going to movies, buying comic books and talking about them. That's just the culture I grew up in. And they did such a great job of whenever there was an opportunity to connect it to reality, to connect it to scripture, they would do that. And so that's how I was raised. So it's kind of second nature for me. And so although I love to discuss and debate things of theology and philosophy when it comes to Christianity and things like that, whenever there's an opportunity to help people see, hey, if you're watching this movie and you're connecting, let me tell you why you're connecting to it. It's because reality is this. And you share the gospel message, and then you see, I mean, every time you see a good story, I always say it's really kind of ripped off. Something's been ripped off from the gospel. Think about Thor, the first Thor movie. You could really summarize it like this. God, Odin, sends his son, Thor, to Earth to die and be raised back to life to conquer evil. I mean, where have we heard that before? Sure, it's not a perfect analogy, but you get every good story is really stolen from the best story, which happens to be history in the gospel and the atonement of Christ. So, what would you add to that?
No, I think you're right. So I think that Christianity is the meta narrative of the history of the world. It's the best story. It's the best. I mean, obviously we believe that it's true, right? It actually, historically, these things happened.
Look who it is.
but
Can I stay on my own show for crying out loud?
I mean, some people complain about the hiddenness of God, but I think a much bigger problem is the hiddenness of Eli.
Hey, I have to interrupt you. Thank you so much. You guys see, I got the right guest. You guys love the topic so much. You could just go on and on. So I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm just going to, if I get knocked off, you guys could finish to whatever your heart, is content, and then wrap it up for me. If that happens.
But Eli, the last question you asked and what we're talking about right now.
Yeah. So like, but Christianity is a meta narrative, and Jesus is the greatest archetype of a hero. And of course, we believe that these stories are historically true, but they're also stories that capture your heart and imagination. And like you said, because these stories are so enduring in the human experience of redemption and fallenness and forgiveness and all these things, that even though secularists don't realize that's what they're watching, when they're watching the best stories, those stories will parrot the gospel in some way. I mean, even like you think about, The Dark Knight Rises is a great example of a lot of these themes, and I think that was intentional in the Nolan Batman series. But then also, like, even old stories, like Snow White, for example, you've got this character that eats a forbidden fruit. Because someone tempted her with it, she falls into a deep sleep, and the only way that this can be overcome is true love's kiss. And so this prince of goodness comes and provides that kiss that then she comes back to life, so to speak. I mean, it's just in there. And in the original Snow White story, it's my understanding that the queen then has to dance in shoes of fire for all eternity or whatever. So I mean, it's all of the great stories are going to some way parrot the gospel, because the gospel is the story. It's the story of humanity, of the world.
Amen to that. And Eli's gone again. So
yeah, but you brought up Thor a minute ago. Thanos. There's also good stuff in movies and literature and films like that will capture philosophical or theological ideas, even if we get away from the pastoral kind of stuff. Like, for example, if you're trying to explain to someone what annihilationist Christians, like conditional immortality people like Chris Date, might hold to, well, one thing you can do is go to the Thanos snap, where he snaps his finger and suddenly they wither away, they die. Or for a long time in philosophy, when we talk about the notion that, and oh man, Eli should be here because he would love this, that if you try to go back to the most fundamental things you can know, ultimately your human experience, like you have to look to, if you don't have this transcendent foundation of reality in God, then for all you know, yes, everything seems real, but how do you know you're not in the Matrix? That's what everybody says. The Matrix becomes a great way of explaining things. So I just think that movies are good illustrations for not just spiritual truths, but also theological and philosophical stuff as well.
So Eli is trying to send me a text here right now. He says, this shows up. Something went wrong. Please ensure you are connected to the internet. So yeah, Eli sent me this text. I don't know if he's coming back.
Yeah.
Here, I'll give him a call.
Well, while you're doing that, I see a couple of questions or interesting things in the live chat.
Hello.
Hey, Eli, how's it going?
If you got my text, I think there's something up with StreamYard. I just got it's acting up. Never happened before, so I do apologize.
Well, it just kind of adds to the excitement.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I have no idea how long I'll stay in, so we'll see.
We'll appreciate the time we have with you as long as that lasts.
That's right.
But maybe you just need to make a graphic of a Force Ghost for yourself to put up there.
That'd be really good, actually.
Yeah. Well, I was going to there's an interesting thing here that is a good corrective as we're talking about these things. Angel A says a problem is happening in communication where we stress stories and our worldview, quote unquote, etc., but yet not the actual, most very real, substantial God of our world view our story. Obviously, so what like a moment there, he's gone again. But like I said a moment ago, what's that?
Keep talking. I'm going to answer Eli's.
Yeah. So I said a moment ago, the story of Christianity is a story, but it's true. It's a true story, right? And if it was a film, it would say at the beginning, this is a true story, right? We obviously believe that Jesus was a real human being, the God-man, God incarnate. But did this really happened in space and time? And that if we could go back in a time machine, we would see all of these things unfold, and the death, burial, and resurrection, all of those things are real. And so obviously we want to make sure that people don't just look to films and things. Those are mere analogies. What we want most is for people to become grounded in the Word of God, so they know the story of the Bible itself, and they can go there. So that's a good thing to point out. She continues, you guys, he or she continues, you guys mean, but to outsiders, the difference is all the difference at times. Our worldview does nothing. Our stories do nothing. The very real God of our worldview is the one that makes it so. Yeah, I know what you're getting at. And of course, we need to make sure that we stress the real story. These just serve as analogies and talking points. And in fact, I don't know if when he'll be back, but there was a movie several years ago with Matt Damon called The Adjustment Bureau, and perhaps some of you all will remember The Adjustment Bureau. And the whole topic of the film was obviously God or some God-like figure is controlling things, and the question was, okay, so to what degree and what kind of free will does man have? Well, obviously, if you walked out of that movie, that's a good thing to talk about when you're talking about real theological matters. I mean, between the three of us here, there are at least two different views of human freedom. But if you watch The Adjustment Bureau, both we and Eli would say that we believe in free will. We would just describe free will differently. And that's, of course, been the subject of many vigorous debates between us and Eli. But that's something that Christians hold to, is some form of free will. So a movie is a jumping off point to talk about a really deep theological issue like that. So I think that because here's the thing that for sure, you're right that outsiders don't necessarily know the gospel to the degree that hopefully Christians running YouTube channels do, although there's problems there too with some Christians running YouTube channels. But the fact is, when you're out with your friends or you're talking about things in life, whether it's something that happened to you or a book you read or a movie you saw, one thing that we want to be good at as people who want to reach the world for Christ is drawing things back to that presentation of the gospel. And so if you are able to do that from Star Wars or The Adjustment Bureau or Snow White, then that gives you a door that might not have been there otherwise.
What about the Book of Eli?
The Book of Eli.
Speaking of Eli, Eli, by the way, I don't think he's going to be back here. So you and I can just have some.
Well, it's funny you bring up the Book of Eli, because I think that is, if I remember correctly, it's a post-apocalyptic world. Mm-hmm. And we find out by the end of the film that the most valuable thing they have is the Bible, right?
Right. Yeah. In fact, that movie came out it's 10 or about maybe 11 years ago now. Because a year ago, I wrote an article called The Book of Eli 10-year anniversary. And I talk about how it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I just got this up here. Here's the conclusion. I say, I love The Book of Eli. In fact, I believe it's one of the best Christian movies of all time. I say the violence is sometimes graphic and the language can hurt the ears of a churchgoer, but this movie provides an awesome example of the importance of studying the Bible, memorizing scripture, applying the words of Christ to our lives, and ultimately how God's word can transform individuals as well as culture itself. After seeing the Book of Eli, I made a commitment to read the Bible daily and memorize it as Eli did. A decade later, this commitment has clearly transformed my life. So I love the Book of Eli and encourage people to see it. I actually do refer to it as a Christian movie in a certain sense. So it's well done.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of surprising that it got made, right? With that sort of
Right.
emphasis. I just want to jump real quick. Angel A is saying that, no, that wasn't my point. Her point seems to be something like the idea that we can't have rational justification and knowledge claims without God as the transcendental foundation of all of knowledge and reality, you know, kind of a Van Tillian or Bonsinian presuppositional perspective, which I don't know where you're at on this, Tim, but I actually agree with presuppositionalists about the fact that God is the reason that we're able to know anything.
Mhm.
And that our ability to reason and all of that is, and I do agree that when the atheist uses rational argumentation to try and show that God does not exist, as Van Til said, it's like a child crawling up into her father's lap to slap his face. You wouldn't be able to slap his face if you weren't sitting in his lap, right? So I agree with all that. We have methodological differences between presuppositionalists.
Yeah, my only, yeah, I agree with that too. The only difference is I feel like we can rationally conclude that that's the case instead of starting with that presupposition.
That would be
But that's just, but yeah, ultimately we're both agreeing that nobody could be rational apart from God. If we weren't created in God's image or likeness, we couldn't do that.
So actually, Tim, someone, Stephen Revered, said, "Hey, Braxton, talk about the Castaway movie analogy.
Yeah.
Any news on that banned video of yours?" So that video was banned, and I actually wrote a article for your website, Tim.
Oh yeah.
On basically what I talked about in that video. And the reason it was banned was because I used footage from Joe Rogan. Now, with fair use, you're allowed to use footage if you from someone else's copywritten show, if the point is to provide commentary. And there are several other little nuanced things about it. And so it was banned. I could have challenged it. And the person's asking me, have you decided to challenge that or whatever? I'm not going to challenge it, but I think I'm going to remake the video and just read from the transcript instead of showing the footage. But the reason this person is asking is, if this is the person I'm thinking of, they told me that video they thought was so powerful that they made actual paper flyers with that video link on it and gave them away to people during evangelism.
Wow.
And so what the point of that has to do with Castaway, and the point of that video was Joe Rogan and Sean Carroll. Sean Carroll's a theoretical physicist, and they were talking about, and he famously, as you know, had a debate with William Lane Craig. It's the one debate that some atheists think that Craig loses all the time, but the atheists that might have a case would be with the Sean Carroll debate, and I don't think they have a case there either. Shout out to another article on your page. There's an article where someone else explains why he won and why that is often misunderstood.
Yeah, let me, I'm looking that up here really quick.
Yeah, so
it's called Sean Carroll's Dishonesty: The Debate of 2014. That's written by Ronald Cram, April 15th, 2020. If anybody out there thinks that Sean Carroll won that debate, go read this article and get back to us.
Yeah. So, but he was on, so that's the guy, Sean Carroll, and he was on Joe Rogan's show, and they were talking about, through the course of the video, Sean Carroll ends up saying, like, okay, look, it feels like we have real free will, but we don't, but we can basically live like we do and pretend, is basically what he was saying. He also says, it seems like morality is meaningful, but ultimately people can't help it if they do something, you know, that we would call evil. That's what they were determined to do, and they couldn't really help that. So we don't really have that kind of morality where we can choose to do otherwise, and so we're responsible. But we got to assume that we got to pretend like we do. And you know, he even says it really looks like the universe has things in it that are designed, but we know that's not true, so we act like we don't. And the multiverse, sprinkle a little multiverse on it, and don't think too much. He doesn't say those things. I'm caricaturing him, but that's basically what happens. And so what I said in the article on your site and in the video was, it reminds me of the great Tom Hanks movie Castaway, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And everyone knows one of the most memorable things about that film is that he took this volleyball, a Wilson volleyball, and put a face on it with blood and called it Wilson. And that became a character in the film. but it wasn't really it wasn't a real person. And the only value that Wilson has is that he is an icon of sorts of real humanity, of real personal connection that Tom Hanks craves and that we all need. So you put some eyes on it. Well, yeah, that's like we pretend to have free will. Put a mouth on it. Well, we pretend it's designed, even though it's not. And at the end of toward the end of the film, when Wilson floats away into the ocean, Tom Hanks is crying out for it, but it's not real. It's not a real person. And in the end, that even though it was meaningful to him during that time, it's just a volleyball floating in the ocean, man.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if we really don't have morality, free will, if it's not really designed, if there's not really any intrinsic worth and value to people, we're just a volleyball floating in the ocean of the cosmos, man.
Awesome.
And nothing really matters.
What a great illustration. Yeah, your article can be found on freethinkingministries.com. It's called Sean Carroll, Joe Rogan, and a Volleyball Called Wilson. You wrote that April 27th of 2020. And that's just a fantastic article. Encourage people. I tried to share it, but I realized I can't share it without Eli's approval, and he's not here. And I see he just made a comment. Question: why did God actualize a world in which I can't join my own show?
Yeah, that might cause me some concern if I was Eli, but I'm here. So God wanted a world where we're here.
Yeah, God created a world in which two Molinists would overtake his show.
Yeah,
that's
right.
He's thinking the problem of evil, But
yeah, Vera, I see Vera, Slam RN. These are all people that
yeah,
I know. And thank you all for being here. Actually, it's funny because Vera, and I'm probably going to butcher this, Vera, but she asked in the Trinity Radio group on Facebook the other day, she said, I think it was during Christmas, she was in some cabin or something somewhere, and all she had was a VHS of Star Wars Episode 2. And she said, I have never seen anything Star Wars. I'm going to start with this. And so I said, okay. Now, obviously, I love that film, but I said, okay, here's what I want you to do. And I'm going to put this in intentional non-geek terminology.
Mm-hmm.
And that is watch it until Ewan McGregor gets to the rainy baby factory and then turn the film off and go to bed and imagine that it just ends there.
The rainy baby factory.
Yeah. Because, the where the clone army's being
right.
But that's a great scene. The fight between Jango Fett and Obi-Wan there is really, really great, I think.
Yeah.
But after that, it gets a little wacky at times. But she comes back and she says, okay, I never saw a rainy baby factory, but I saw Master Yoda die. I saw a young Darth Vader flying a boat in space. And I'm like, I don't know what you saw, because young Darth Vader flying a boat in space is Episode 1, and Yoda dying is Return of the Jedi. I don't know what you saw. She said she found the rainy babies. Yeah.
So Braxton, what's your favorite Star Wars movie out of all of them?
I think I'm going to sound pretty predictable here and say Empire is probably my favorite.
I agree.
Why do you love that?
Go ahead.
Which is partly why I'm upset about Last Jedi, because if you do take the jumping off point from Force Awakens as, okay, we're kind of in some way following a kind of a narrative, a kind of a story, it's kind of following what happened in the first trilogy. Like Force Awakens obviously borrows a lot from Episode 4.
Right. Maybe too much.
Yeah, maybe too much. That's the criticism.
I still loved it.
Yeah. And so if you think about that and you think that Last Jedi is supposed to be like Empire,
right.
But that and I really liked Rogue One as well.
Yeah,
but now that the problem there is Rogue One doesn't, this good and bad clear lines of distinction that we've been talking about. That's for the Skywalker saga. That doesn't necessarily extend to Solo or Mandalorian for sure, or Rogue One. But taking that out of the equation, those are great. I enjoyed even Solo. I know it didn't get a lot of praise, but I like Solo.
Do you think that, I kind of feel like there's a good and evil in The Mandalorian. I know that got blurred a little bit, and it started out kind of blurry, but I mean, he seems to have really kind of turned a corner as he's become a father figure. He's become very pro-life, that's for sure, and adopted the child. You see him go from somebody who's willing to slice somebody in half, even or to vaporize Jawas as they're running away, to somebody who is then willing to fight to save life later on in the series.
Yeah, I mean, we do see in the beginning of season 2, the first episode of season 2, we see him string up the guy who runs that,
True.
And leave him there for whatever creatures to devour.
Right.
So that was very much.
He was a bad guy.
He deserved it, right?
He deserved it, yeah.
but I mean, that was a very much an anti-hero move. But yeah, you might have a point there, because he does have a story arc that we see him as very much a hardened bounty hunter, who then, when he discovers this seemingly supernatural special child, becomes someone who wants to protect that. And so there may be and he meets Luke Skywalker, who is arguably meant to be the messianic character in the Star Wars films. But all that, I can't believe I'm talking about this on a live stream. This sounds like I'm the crowd that I'm used to talking to. They'll let me do a little geek stuff, but I feel like I'm going way too far here. But this is what I was asked to do, But I still think with the introduction of Boba Fett and that sort of thing, it seems like we're capitalizing on the anti-heroes in the Star Wars universe, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. I see Mando and Boba Fett as two completely kinds of people. I think Mando is the John Wick of the Star Wars universe. But at the same time, I mean, you see there's clearly instances where he needs help. But Boba Fett, I mean, he's kind of like the bad guy that you're rooting for. I just don't see Mando as a bad guy. I mean,
I don't think we can say he's a bad guy.
Yeah,
but that's kind of the point, right? I mean, it's like he's imperfect. We can say that. He's morally imperfect, which the anti-hero narrative for more grown-up viewing, I guess, has a thing to it too, because we're imperfect. And so there is something there. When I talk about, and when you talk about the clear good and evil in the Star Wars saga, those films, those official Star Wars Luke Skywalker storyline or Skywalker storyline films are the cultural myth. The Mandalorian is maybe it's in that category too. I don't know, but I think of it more as an anti-hero. I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's an imperfect guy. Yeah.
Well, I've got an article I wrote called 10 Reasons Why the Mandalorian is My Favorite Star Wars Character. I'll just run through these really quick. Number 1, love the original vibe. Favreau and friends were able to get to the original vibe of that first movie. It's kind of that sci-fi Old West thing that Lucas had going on. And I feel like Favreau understood he might, some people have said that he understands George Lucas's vision better than Lucas understood it. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And on paper, I mean, Jon Favreau, on paper, okay, who is the cool, like if you asked 100 real Star Wars geeks, who is the coolest character? You're going to get a lot of people answer Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
So he took basically the look and feel of Boba Fett, which is a Mandalorian, right? And made him look maybe even a little bit cooler, right? Or at least newer and fresher.
Right.
And then introduced a super cute character. And it seems like all the right obvious moves to make if you're going to do a side quest, from the, but it's like I saw that meme. I think that meme's so great. And we're not saying anything about the consumption of alcoholic beverages here. That's not the point. I was raised to believe growing up that tasting alcohol was akin to assassinating the president. But, but it's like there's that meme that has J.J. Abrams saying, you can't make a Star Wars thing that both satisfies the old fans and brings in new fans. And Jon Favreau is there going, hold my beer.
Man, Favreau is just a genius. I mean, what else has he done? Favreau, I've called him a storytelling genius who should be the only one allowed to pilot the Star Wars cockpit. Everything that he touches seems to turn to gold. He directed the Elf movie, and it instantly became a Christmas classic. He launched the MCU, the Marvel Comics universe with Iron Man, and has now decided to, like you said, hold my beer, let me save the Star Wars franchise. So, man, I love the guy. I think he understands. Maybe he's the C.S. Lewis storyteller of our day. I don't know.
Don't tell C.S. Lewis that. But I'll tell you,
he gets it, though. He gets it.
He does. And I'll tell you, and maybe we need to close this out soon, but one thing we didn't talk about is, okay, so we have what happened in The Last Jedi, basically, for me and you anyway, really tarnishing our Luke Skywalker hero vibe, right?
Right.
But then we have in the end of Mandalorian season 2, the return of Luke Skywalker. And for those that don't know, who are just here because you know us, Luke Skywalker, after the original trilogy that ended in the 80s, he's still youngish, right? He's not Mark Hamill today.
Right.
And we don't know what happens. We knew when people like me and you probably read the Star Wars books, but now that Disney has said no more to those, that's not canon anymore. Right. We don't know what happened to Luke Skywalker, and here he shows up, and he's everything we hoped he would be. Yes.
Yeah, that's why I said I kind of felt like Favreau was saying, "All right, Rian Johnson, you had your fun. Let me show you the Luke Skywalker that everybody knows, including Mark Hamill. I mean, this is the Luke Skywalker that even Mark Hamill knew was supposed to exist." And so Favreau says, "Hey, even though I'm writing about Mandalorians here, let me save Luke Skywalker. Let me redeem Luke Skywalker." So again, I just another reason as to why the Mandalorian is not just my favorite character now, but the series is just so awesome because Jon Favreau and friends, they understand what Star Wars is supposed to be. They grew up not just as fans who loved these characters just as much as you and I did. And they know what they're doing.
It makes me wonder because for those that haven't seen it, in Rogue One, they did this, and they did this in the final episode of Mandalorian for season 2, is they used that, I think they call it deep fake technology to map Mark Hamill's face onto this younger character so that it is almost indistinguishable. And if you weren't looking for it, like if you didn't know, you probably wouldn't raise any eyebrows at it. Right. It's real. It makes me wonder, are we going to see more of the original characters in their own series? Like Luke and Leia training to be Jedi or whatever. I don't know.
Man, I wish Eli was here because I know Eli was geeking out during the final episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian. When that X-Wing fighter came to the ship, I was like, all right, big deal. We've seen X-Wing fighters before. I wasn't freaking out yet. And then I saw somebody get out and he's wearing a cloak. And I was like, that kind of looks like Luke Skywalker's cloak from Return of the Jedi, but it's not. I thought it's just some Jedi or somebody looking like a Jedi, not a big deal. Then I see a lightsaber. Then I see a
green lightsaber.
A green lightsaber, and I was like, they're messing with us right now, but it's not Luke Skywalker. Then you get a quick glimpse of the jet, or the guy in the cloak with the green lightsaber. You see his belt buckle. Now, I'm an artist. I grew up drawing pictures of Luke Skywalker and Boba Fett and all these guys all the time. I drew that belt buckle probably 1,000 times, and I was like, oh, that's Luke Skywalker's belt buckle. I mean, if they're messing with us, they're going above and beyond just to mess with us. And then it showed his hilt of his lightsaber held by a gloved hand. And I paused it and I got up. I was watching it over the lunch hour by myself, and I got up and I was just freaking out. And, I think I was starting to cry tears of joy at this point. And And I thought, well, okay, this is so awesome. It's clearly Luke. And you see him using his powers the way you knew that Luke would use his powers, and how he would use the Force. But I thought, well, okay, this is great, but they're not going to show his face. But I don't care. I don't need it. And then when he starts to pull his cloak down, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to pause it. And I think I was totally holding back tears of even more joy, and felt like I was 10 years old again. And you would have been, how old were you when the first Star Wars came out, or when Return of the Jedi came out?
What year was that?
That was
83. So I was 2.
Oh man. So yeah, I was 10 years old. I was in 5th grade when Return of the Jedi came out.
But the joy that you had at that, imagine all of that feeling, because this was my experience. I'm watching that. My wife and 2 daughters are sitting over on the couch who care nothing about this.
Yeah.
And it's right at that penultimate moment where he's coming through and I'm just like you. Oh my gosh, they're going to do it. Are they doing it? They're doing it. And then all of a sudden my family thinks it's a good time to start talking about some mundane detail of life. And I'm like, do you all not realize what's happening? Yeah. So it's like, but anyway, well, listen, we've talked about a lot of this stuff. It's probably time to close this down. I think we should dedicate this stream to the memory of Eli Ayala, who once ran this channel. But I think in the end, I don't know what you want to say to kind of close it off, but I would just say that we are all Star Wars geeks. So part of the fun of this is just us geeking out on a live stream about a topic that we don't usually get to talk about to this degree like this. But also, it really is true that these are things that are out there in our culture. There's a lot out there that is hard to redeem because it's just explicit. And this is something that families watch, kids watch, and a lot of people who watch this stuff, even if you don't think you do. And there are analogies to draw. There are ways of helping people to see the beauty of, number one, a world that includes the supernatural because it's more real, because that's the way reality is, and drawing analogies for today. Obviously, Star Wars is imperfect. There have been a lot of people who point out that the fact that it draws from other world religions tarnishes it to the point that Christians should have nothing to do with it. But I don't think that necessarily needs to be the case, because that's a good moment to talk about those things. So I just think that the overwhelming message that I think Eli wanted to get across with all of this is there is spiritual benefit from drawing from the stories of our day to illustrate the faith that we know is so real. And I think that's important. Tim, what do you have to say?
I'll just add to that, that we can take these stories and use them as analogies or illustrations. And with that, consider the Mandalorian's daily commitment to his armor, his daily commitment. Mando's always focused on his armor. He's constantly looking to strengthen the armor he wears. He wants the best scar. He wants the best stuff. And he's made a commitment to, almost never anyway, take his helmet off around others. And Christians are commanded to do the same. We've got to guard our hearts and minds with what God has given us. That's even better than Mandalorian Beskar armor. We got to guard our hearts and minds with the breastplate of righteousness and the helmet of salvation. And we must make that same daily commitment a lifestyle, because there's always a war, if you realize it or not. You're targeted by the enemy every single day, an enemy who hates you. So with that in mind, consider the 6th chapter of Ephesians, Ephesians 6:13 and on. Paul says, therefore, put on the full armor of God, so when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything to stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist and the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all of this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one, and take the helmet of salvation. And so this is the spiritual armor. And, I've used the Mandalorian's commitment to his armor to help other Christians make that same kind of to see the importance of that lifestyle, and that, you know, of being in a war. You need to protect your head and your heart, and know the truth. It's really knowing truth and taking thoughts captive to obey Christ, and before they take you. So I'll just leave it with that.
Amen.
And I'll let you have the last word.
What's your favorite Avengers character?
Oh man, I'd have to say Captain
America. I knew it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't actually know how to close a stream that somebody else is running.
Yeah.
So I think what we'll do is, I guess you and me, Tim, will just log off and leave it to Eli to figure that out. But I want to thank Eli for having us on.
Yeah.
This has been fun, and maybe a unique sort of thing. And I hope it gets a lot of views just because it's fun and different, and not like all the other theology and apologetic stuff out there.
That's right. You know, and when Eli called me, he said maybe the two of us can join him again in another few weeks, and
We'll do a prequel.
Yeah, do a prequel to this.
Yeah,
that sounds good. All right, brother. Well, always good to talk to you, Braxton, and it's always good to talk with Eli. So really bummed that he wasn't here for most of it, but we'll do it again soon.
All right. See you guys.
All right. May the force be with you.
I think I'm on now. Let me see here.